Hi everyone, I'm Hannah Tudor. I'm a Senior Social Creative at McCann, and I will be hopefully leading this panel for the next half an hour or so. And I will hand over firstly to our incredible panel to introduce themselves.
Imogen Taziman, I'm ECD at McCann Manchester. I get to work with the incredible Hannah most days. I have been an ECD at McCann Manchester for the last 5 or 6 years. Prior to that, McCann Manchester was actually my first job out of uni. I didn't go to London straight away. I stayed in Manchester and absolutely learnt my trade, I think, at McCann Manchester, fair to say. And then did move down to London, worked at McCann London, worked at Camerama, so we've had kind of both experiences, the devil network agencies, I think you called us, McCann, and Camerama, which was one of the big independents.
Apparently you're a bit quiet at the back, so just project those voices.
Oh, I can do that. That's fine.
We'll do our best. Sorry to everyone on the front row.
We are now just going to shout at for the foreseeable. But yeah, moved around London a little bit and then came back up to McCann Manchester, where I get to work with Hannah a lot and work on many of our brands. With our partners.
Lovely. Hi, I'm Tom. I work at TBWA in Manchester. Been working in creative industry for about 10 years. Been working at TBWA for about just under 3. Started off as a brand designer, and then kind of always wanted to kind of work more on the ideas all the time, and got kind of more and more conceptual. And then just over the years, kind of just gravitated more into art direction. Always kind of wanted to work more in advertising, really, and I think that's kind of what kind of led me to this role here now.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Miles. I'm creative director at Meanwhile. I've been there for maybe 2 years now. Before that, I was at the BBC with Aaron for 7 years, and I was originally born in the Isle of Man, and I have worked in London as well for 10 years, but the North's better.
Do the microphones work? Do we need them? Is it working? Oh, it's recording. Okay. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm Aaron. I'm a senior writer at BBC Creative. I actually started my career way north, like north of the wall in Scotland, and worked my way down, and I've met some lovely people and worked with some great people along the way.
Fab, thank you everyone. So we're going to start with a bit of an obvious question, because I thought it was only right, in the fact of why is it so important to sort of think past those first and obvious thoughts to get to the juicy stuff the other side. Obviously the guys have touched on it, but I'd love to hear what you all think about that. Whoever wants to start.
Do you want me to go? Shall I go next?
Yeah.
Thank you. I think Tim and James phrased it beautifully. I think doing the obvious stuff, which is often the safe stuff, right? That's another word for it that we use quite a lot, the safe stuff, is actually the most terrifying place you can be in, because it's just the stuff that's going to get ignored. That's what they've talked about. There's loads of research out there, not least the most recent piece, which was the cost of being dull. If you haven't looked that up, have a look at it. Your clients will know it inside out if you don't. And it's all about the effect that vanilla, safe advertising basically needs a hell of a lot of media spend behind it to cut through and have the impact that less obvious, bolder, creative advertising works. So the impact that has. So if that's not a reason to get to outshine obvious, I don't know what else you need other than a massive business case, because it's a huge driver for growth for your business. But as the kind of guys talked about, just for the heart and soul of what we do and why we get into it, that's what makes it us tick, right? It's hard, the industry, it's hard. You do late nights and long hours. Hopefully not too late and not too long. I hope we're changing that along the way, but it happens. And you've got to have something that really makes your heart sing to like keep you going, to focus on.
Yeah,
so I think it's all good. I think the reason to do it.
Yeah, I think as well, like as creative people, like we tend to have really good taste, and we don't like to see the same things over and over again. Like if you think about what stands out to you, what style, what music video, what film, what shooting technique, it's always something that feels a little bit fresh. And when we work in the agency, we write hundreds of ideas and we see hundreds of ideas, so we see the same things again and again. The same client wants to say the same brief and the same answers come back. But when you look at so many, it's always the one that's done something very different. Sometimes even the opposite that stands out. Like if we presented 10 or 20 ideas today, there'd be 1 or 2 that stood out, and they would be the fresh ones. And I think, yeah, that's why it's important to stay away from the obvious to stand out.
think obvious is quite boring as well. I mean, I love the ad Cats with Thumbs. I know it's quite old now, but for Cravendale, and that's just so not obvious and so not boring. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I think as well that you can kind of imagine that if you're not going to do something obvious, you're going to do something quite complicated. That's what you end up doing. But I think that the key is just to do something really like unexpected, and then that's what's going to get engagement with an audience. I guess like what you just said there is that audiences are just going to get bored if they just get regurgitating the same work over and over. It's slightly different, but you've got to put your own fresh spin on it, or come up with a new kind of piece of tech that you can use to kind of deliver your work in a new interesting way.
Yeah, completely. And I think that actually sort of brings me on to my next point in that unexpectedness. I think sometimes we all get that feeling, don't we, when you see a piece of good work and you're like, damn, I've got that like jealous pang inside me. And I think that sometimes you're kind of like, how did I not think of that? And I think the best ideas kind of bring us onto that. And Aaron, I think your Pudsey campaign that you did for sort of mental health that turned Pudsey into a sad bear gave me that feeling. But I think that sort of on the surface, when you see it, you kind of think that you are like, oh, how did I not think of that? Do you find sometimes that those obvious seeming ideas are actually sometimes the hardest ones to sort of come up with when you're in the room?
I mean, it's a really good question. When we had that idea, Patchless Pudsey, I actually got a lot of emails from colleagues at the BBC saying, how did we not come up with it? So obviously it was staring a lot of people in the face. But I think like behind that idea, and go and have a look at it afterwards if you haven't seen it, is like every brand has a logo. Every single brand will have a logo, and some will be known better than others. Children in Needs is a little yellow bear that wears a patch over his eye called Pudsey. It's very well known. So we, doing an idea that starts with changing that bear seemed very obvious, but then it was the how and the why that I think made it as successful as it was, because the patch on the bear's eye represents a child in need, a physical need. But as with the way things are with phones and social media and everything, like the main thing facing children was actually mental health issues, which are far harder to see. So that then led us for Pudsey to take his bandana, they call it, or his patch off, to say now that the children are in need, you can't spot them as easily. And giving it that backing, making it a topical idea, felt like the right time to do it. And I think that's why it was so successful. So yeah, it was a bit of a blur between an obvious thing to do, play with a logo, but also finding the less obvious time to do it and find that topical reason to do it that got so many people behind it. We had Phil Foden and Joe Wicks and loads of faces, holding the bear, and it gave it a great reach for a very small budget.
I think you make such a good point on that. Not obvious doesn't mean complicated. That's like one of the simplest things you probably could have done, and that's why it's so powerful. And that I wouldn't necessarily say that those big, sticky, brilliant ideas are harder to get to. Like, you probably all have them every day, but they can be harder to stick to and harder to have the conviction with, because they feel scarier. So they are harder to hold on to sometimes, and to keep holding on to, and to protect as a team. So I love that. It's such a good point that it doesn't have to feel complicated.
Yeah.
It almost probably shouldn't. It probably shouldn't feel that hard.
And what helps you have that sort of relevance and feel less obvious is to be topical as well. Like, if you're always scanning newspapers or on your social feeds and you're hearing what people are talking about, if you can imbue that into your idea, it will always feel less obvious because it's of a time.
Yeah.
It was a proactive idea, wasn't it?
There was no brief for that. Like, no one had asked for that job. We were sort of scanning. Well, we had this logo, and we're like, what can we do with it and why? So it was constantly scanning, like, okay, let's do this. So that's kind of where it came from.
I think, spotting the opportunity and creating the opportunity, that's where it is uncomplicated, and you hustle to make it happen, no matter what the budget.
I think probably like one of the hardest things as well is and James mentioned it before, is like the perseverance that you've got to keep kind of like plugging away at your ideas. I think you've got to do like loads and loads of bad ideas until you find a good one.
Well, that's useful, right? Sometimes churn out all the obvious ones with a bit of help
quickly,
and then you get that out of the way. Yeah.
But then I think, but then I guess it's like being okay with yourself to get through the bad ideas, because you can kind of sit there and like overthink, oh God, I'm never going to, this isn't a good one, but actually you can, you're chatting with your mate at work, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is interesting, and it puts you on another kind of like trail of thought, and then you come up with a less obvious, cool idea, or you put a cool spin on something that was obvious and now it's new, and it's exciting.
Letting people in for that process is essential. Like, the easiest thing for me to do as a creative is to feel like, and certainly maybe at the start of my career, is like, keep your ideas like this, because you're panicking that someone's going to look at one of them. But obviously, as you get older, you realise that's all you fucking need in life. But letting people in to be able to input into that is because they will see a completely different spin, like you were saying about the musicians that came and gave you that completely different spin on the song you'd probably imagined for a long time. But having the confidence to go, actually, do you know what? It's not that thing that we thought it was for ages. It's that over there is massive.
And I think actually that really nicely brings us on to sort of my next question, was that obviously sometimes those those non-obvious ideas are quite scary. They're a little bit out there. Obviously, I feel like the biggest one that everyone kind of thinks of in that space is probably like the first time the Cadbury Gorilla happened, when he was drumming to Phil Collins. And talking about sort of bringing people on that journey, Tom, you were obviously part of that incredible prostate check work that was sort of all about that, like, completely non-obvious idea. And talking about bringing people in on that journey, how do you sort of approach taking an idea like that to people and being sort of really out there maybe with your thinking and trying to bring them on that journey to, because obviously as much as it's great for us all to have incredible ideas, we've got to get them bought, and whether that's by our ECDs or by our clients, what sort of, how do you approach those kind of things?
Not sure. Firstly, I'll take the comparison to Cupra Gorilla.
Do it.
I think you need to take as much care in the presentation as you've taken with the idea. So, like, if you love the idea, you need to love the way you present the idea. And I think as we work through kind of presentations, every time you do one, the next one's better. I think you need to make sure that it's not just all about yourself as well. Like, you come up with a great idea that you're dead excited about. The first thing you need to do is get the client excited about it. So I think you need to address what's their problem, what's their objective they're trying to strive for, and if you can do that, then they're like, great, these guys actually care about us. They know what we're looking to do. And then I think you're just basically taking them on the journey, right? And don't make it too long, but take them on the journey. I think it's fun if it's almost like a little performance that's like mutually beneficial for you guys. You're enjoying presenting to them, they're enjoying kind of like either getting to know you for the first time or like enjoying seeing you again because you're doing quite a fun kind of presentation. And then kind of hopefully you're going to blow their mind with your cool idea, but by that point you've already kind of won them over.
Yeah, you've already got them on board.
Yeah. And then I think, like you were just saying, it's hard work sometimes kind of getting people to buy those ideas, getting clients to buy them. I think we found sometimes the worst thing that's going to happen is that they don't buy your super cool and obvious idea, but then 6 months later when they want one, they know you can do one, and they're not looking elsewhere for that. So I think sometimes it's like worth, you might have done a campaign or a piece of work for a client, and then at the back end of that meeting or a week later you go, actually, we want to show you something else that's a bit, it's a bit cheeky and a bit tasty, but they don't need it. But actually, they'll come back to you in a few months and go, we want to do that, or we want to revisit that in a different way.
Chances are that's the bit they've remembered.
Yeah.
You may do a load of like really solid body of work for them in a space that you might think that they're never going to buy this piece over here. But I mean, chances are, to be honest, no clients get into this to make boring crap work. That's not what they're here for either. And in fact, what's the average tenure now of a CMO? 2 years. Like, they're there to make a bang. So they want to make good, exciting, sticky work too, and they've all read the research we have. There's huge business cases to make exciting, impactful work. So I don't think ideally you don't ever want to be in a space where you have to sell an idea to a client and think, oh God, it's going to be too because they should be on that journey with you in the first place. They should be saying to you, we need some really big, bold, brave work, because that's how we're going to see growth. So if you're in an ideal world for me, is you've got that real safe space to be bold, whether it's with you guys when I'm looking at your work, so you feel psychological safety to go, what about this, what about that? Hope you do.
Yeah, completely.
But same with your clients as well, to be able to, I feel like you've got that partnership so that when you're discussing and talking about the work, you're not selling it, you've kind of come to it together.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, Tom, like, bring them on that journey, so then you get to the point where you show them idea and it is the obvious answer to the problem you've almost set up.
I think as well on that prostate cancer project, I guess like the unobvious idea was that we injected like humour into it's a really serious topic. We figured out that, like, obviously the best way to get blokes to talk around it was just to make it, you know, like easier to talk around and a bit funnier. And then that just kind of got us into it. But I guess once we kind of got that first campaign out of the way, and we'd built a good relationship with that client, it meant the next time we wanted to present a piece of work like that to them, it was dead easy, and we almost like can just do it on like WhatsApp, you know. Like,
Yeah,
it's like,
because you've already sort of.
you know, we've got a cool idea. Do you want to chat tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
I'm so jealous of that prostate work, by the way. I'm so pissed off that I never did that myself. So, because it's an arm, isn't it? It's a blood test.
definitely.
It's not what everyone
I
else
was
thinks
jealous
it
that
is.
you WhatsApp your client ideas. I was like, just wake up in the middle of the night and send some stuff over. Like, I need that relationship.
Funny messages us, actually.
You're like, please stop messaging me. So we're going to briefly step away from the ideas for a minute because, like James so incredibly put, we are all very proud Northerners in this room, or like me, adopted Northerners, as I like to call myself. And we kind of can't have a conversation about Obvious really without talking about the fact that Obvious isn't the place that a lot of our clients or a lot of graduates look for advertising agencies. But I think it's something that we do need to talk about more, and I'd love to know, Imogen, I know you in particular have sort of, you went down to London and then came back, and sort of Rachel, you as well, like, is there, what drew you back to Manchester in the north? Because I think that's the crux of it all, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, I have such a I want to say a bee in my bonnet. Can you say that? I have such a thing about this, and again, Tim and James, you touched on it as well, in that we end up referring to ourselves in shadow of London, or in reference to London, or in othering to London. And we've all done it on the panel tonight. I've mentioned it already that, I worked in London. And it's one of those weird, like, things that we do.
Yeah.
But in as much as I believe that we shouldn't necessarily do that, I'm also a passionate believer in that we should be talking about the North. So I have this weird relationship with this whole conversation. But yes, I did. Started my career in McCann, Manchester, went down to London for about 10 years and came back up. Honestly, I came back up because I had kids, and it's really hard to raise kids in London. There's a lot to love about it, but I had no family and no support, and it was really hard, and my husband was a teacher, and it was hard work. So we came up primarily because we had family support up here. But at the time, I remember thinking, am I going to have to come out of the industry? Like, do I do something else, anything else? And then what is the opportunity going to be like back in Manchester? I'd worked here for a long time, and even I thought that. And then I obviously gave my head a wobble, looked around, I was like, oh my God, Manchester does not have a lack of talent, and it does not have an opportunity problem, but I do think we have a PR problem. And I think we have a thing within us, and I think it's born and bred in us, as I mentioned bees. We are worker bees. Like, there's a reason the worker bee is our symbol that you see around Manchester. We get on with it, we roll our sleeves up, we get our heads down, and we crack on, and we don't necessarily sing about what we do enough. I think, meanwhile, doing an amazing job in actually putting the North on the map a little bit more. You do brilliant PR for all the stuff that you do. We can all learn a lot from that. I don't think there's a lot of agencies that don't talk about it enough. And if one agency wins, Manchester wins, in my mind. So I really do. We have this thing at McCann Manchester about we want to work on brands that you haven't heard of. And as soon as I realised I came, like, we have Aldi, I work on Matalan, I work on Pure Gym, I work on Jammy Dodgers, I work on Party Rings, like big national names that I had actually no idea we had in our agency, or that we won since in our agency. So I don't think we have any problems in terms of opportunity and talent, but I do think we have a PR problem. That was a long answer, sorry.
That's right, Rachel. I'd love to hear your thoughts as a returning Londoner, and obviously you had such a sort of different background in coming up from the Isle of Man as well.
Yeah.
I imagine that sort of gave you a whole new perspective on things.
Yeah, I'm from the Isle of Man, which, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a teeny tiny island in the middle of nowhere in the Irish Sea, in between Liverpool and Ireland, hence my accent. It's a bit Scouse, it's a bit Irish. And yeah, I just remember growing up watching, I don't know if anyone remembers CD UK and Top of the Pops, and watching music videos and thinking, I want to be friends with S Club 7. How do I get behind the scenes? And, you know, I don't want to be stuck, because on the Isle of Man, you either work in finance, wear kitten heels, wear a pencil skirt, tie your hair up. I hate all those things. I hate maths. And I just wanted, to go out, drive in a limousine, win a BAFTA, live in Hollywood kind of thing. And I just thought I'd never get that in the Isle of Man. You know, I remember talking to my careers advisor in high school, saying I wanted to do media, and she said, "Well, what else do you want to do? You know, what about history? What about?" I said, "No, there's a course. It's 2 years doing media. Even though I can't draw, you know, I did the media course and then, you know, went to university in London. But you don't even have to go to university these days. You can, you know, there's so many people on TikTok making films, and there's so many paths. But yeah, straight out of university, I landed a placement at BMB with Trevor Beatty as ECD there, and moved around a bit in London. But the reason I moved to Manchester was because I wanted a better quality of life, and I wanted to buy a house, not a flat. I wanted a gravel drive, a Land Rover Defender. There was an opportunity here that no one else, it was like a secret, like no one else knew about Manchester. And the opportunity came up with Tim and James at the BBC, actually, that, you know, they were going to be CDs there, and there was a really great opportunity to help level the playing field for women in sport. And now women's football is broadcast on BBC One and not on Facebook like it used to be. And it just felt like there was so much opportunity here. But you've gone back. You've gone to London.
No, do you know, I was going to add something. Like, when I started at the Leith Agency, we used to look at other people's books that had started in London, like people that had started at Wydens and Mother, and they had the same years of experience as us, but their books were unbelievable, and the work they'd done made us so jealous, and we felt so far away from it. But the further I got down and the more I started working with these teams that had started in London, I realised that there was a real advantage to starting in the north, and I'm sure it's the same for people that started in Manchester. And it's like, you do more. Like, you have more responsibility. Like, the teams from the Leith Agency, they can all copyright, art direct, have an idea, set it up in 3 slides and present it, and everything feels tight. Whereas you'll see a lot of teams that have got amazing books, and they'll come in on freelance, and you'll see the way they're presenting and how loose things are. So I think there's a real advantage to starting in the north, because you'll get more responsibility, and you will be doing stuff above your station way quicker. And it will stick with you. You know, where you start and who you learn from is very important, and it will stick with you your whole career.
I couldn't agree more with that, actually. I still have got friends in London that are maybe like a couple of stages like earlier in their career, and they spend their lives making decks for like Shell or clients that you might not particularly want to work for. And we always say that at McCann Manchester, come here, or any probably of our agencies, and you will make like live work within the first 3 months. Yeah. And I you're so right. I've not really thought about it that clearly before. It's really unusual that in London.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, like, sort of looping right back to the whole obvious thing itself, like, I'm very passionate personally about sort of the fact that who we are and our individuality sort of helps us approach things in such unique ways. And I think your point there, Aaron, was great about the fact that maybe we need to look in less obvious places to find those people. Yeah, like, do you sort of, what do each of you think helps you approach things in a less obvious way? Is it, that's all right, don't worry. Is it upbringing? Is it sort of being a female in sport? How do you sort of, what makes you approach things differently? Yeah?
Do you want to go first? I think it leans into kind of what I was saying before, which is, as a young person, I always just liked what was less obvious. Like, it's the way you dress and the music you listen to, and almost like what everyone else did, I would kind of not want to do that. And I'm sure there's people that are sitting here that feel the exact same way. And I think that's why you want to approach things in a different way, because you want to stand out and you want to be different. I think I saw John Hegarty once, and he gave an amazing talk, if anyone's seen John Hegarty, and someone asked him at the end why the powder blue suit and why the funky socks, because he dresses super well and he's very famous for his socks. And he just said, why be ordinary? And I was just like, I like it. You know, the guy is standing out right down to what he puts on his feet in the morning. And it was very inspirational.
It's that famous quote, isn't it, when the world zigs, zag, which is Barbara Noakes, BBH. So I think as a gay woman as well, I've always been very aware of when it comes to casting, why can't the couple be 2 women or 2 men or something? So, and even when choosing the director, 10 years ago, it was majority men, but I've always tried to feature 2 women. My first ever ad for TUI, it was Aoife McCardle against Siri Bunford and Tom Tygholm. And I think, now, especially Merman, the director's rep agency, I think they're here tonight. They have an amazing female roster, and that's great.
Yeah, I think I guess like being like a kid in the 90s as well, like was great. But I mean,
Agree.
I probably just spent like in terms of like I guess like different things. But I mean, it was great. I mean, I grew up either like playing out being a wrestler all day, or watching like Biker Mice from Mars and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or like we grew up playing obscene amounts of like PlayStation 2, and it was great. I mean, I think then any kind of work I want to make, I just want it to be really fun and really rich, and I guess the trend is often to make work that's quite simple, but I think you can still be kind of like really like flamboyant and rich with what you're creating, as long as the idea is really clear. That's kind of my take on that. I think from what's influenced myself.
Just to echo what these guys have said, really. When I was growing up, the standing joke in my family was my mum and dad always used to say, when you watch James Bond on a Saturday night, I'm probably well older than most of you, on James Bond was on ITV on a Saturday night, so there would have been a ton of ad breaks, and my mum always used to say, I used to always say I much preferred the ads to the actual James Bond film. And I honestly, I think that was true then, and I think it might be true now. I've got a very probably short attention span. But I think there's a bit of a trend to it not be very cool to admit we like advertising. I fucking love advertising. There's not many jobs where you get to like do some of the good stuff that we get to do, and there's so many different ways that you can like beam yourself into people's lives now. And I've always stood by the idea that if you're going to force your way into people's lives, then you may as well at least do your best to entertain them. And I think that's what I've tried to live by.
Yeah, no, I think you've all answered that really, really well, and it's kind of brought me to the end of the questions. And I'd love to, while we've got a minute, if anyone has any questions in the room, I'd love to offer them up to our panel.
You were talking about the divide between London and Manchester, and obviously bringing creatives up and not having that. What should we do, or what is happening to allow that? Can you? Is it what? Oh, nice. Kind of. Is there anything that's happening that allows us to close that gap a little bit, or is it just about the PR and the conversations around that and how good we are?
Do you mean close the gap in terms of the perception of the industry in London versus the industry outside? I think there's loads of stuff that is happening, and there's loads more that could be happening. I think Creative Circle coming here is massive.
Mm-hmm.
We woo!
Yeah.
I've spoken at length with Jerry and Dina before this that the way I got into the industry was via the D&AD workshops, where they'd give you a brief one week and you'd go back to the agency the next week, and it went all around Manchester and Leeds, and it was amazing. Gave me my start, it gave Dan Noller his start, my ECD counterpart back at the ranch. And they don't do anything with the North anymore. Never mind Manchester, they don't do anything outside of London. And there are more and more of the big brands that just take our money when it comes to the award shows and then do nothing else with us. So the fact, like Creative Circle are brilliant. You've always supported creatives, I think, across the country. Not least because you look at Margate for a start. It's so I think the stuff like that is brilliant. I think all the PR that us guys can do, honestly, meanwhile, are brilliant at talking about the work that they're doing and being really confident. And as they damn right should be, it's brilliant stuff. I think they're two of the things that are turning the dial.
I was going to say, what you were going to say, really.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, just keep doing great work in the north, and then people will come. It's like, do you remember when everyone wanted to work for Wyden and Kennedy? Wyden and Kennedy Portland? It's because the work is really good. So if we all keep doing great work, hopefully people will come.
I think they don't like it down in London, and I think because it threatens the status quo a bit, doesn't it? It's like, there's an agency and it's doing great work in Manchester, and more clients will be looking that way, saying, can we move over? And it threatens a dynasty. So I love the fact that Imogen and the guys at Meanwhile and everyone are doing such good stuff and PRing it and giving them a little nudge. It's great.
I guess as well, it could just in the nature of this talk, I guess it comes down to like, just don't put safe work in front of your bosses, I guess, or don't put safe work in front of the client unless you really have to. But, you know, the first few times at least, try and push for that unexpected, unobvious work, and then that's going to obviously elevate the whole of Manchester.
I love that, force them into it.
Yeah. The rule of three, and that's it there. Yeah.
I also think that you need to be brave about the Manchester identity. You've got a much better sense of humour than the rest of the United Kingdom, and I feel as though you need to be braver expressing who you are as Mancunians or Northerners in the work that you produce. It's an identity. You talk about the Wyden and Kennedy work from Portland. It was their identity, and that they exaggerated that in all of the work they produced, and I think you need to do that in Manchester.
Yeah, I agree. They had such a body language, didn't they? I mean, Wyden's they're really like those incredible creative agencies that you name immediately. Oh, yeah, sorry. And they do have such a body language, don't they, that you can see through their work. It's such a good point, that. But I love that. Honestly, I really do believe that when one of us wins, we all win in Manchester. We should do more stuff like this. Like we should have more relationship between the agencies. And just get together on probably a bit more of a regular basis.
A bit like, I think James put it really well, that we're all better than content solutions, and I think a lot of people think that Manchester is full of people that just do content solutions. So like everyone said, making brave work that echoes that across the board will only get us more PR and more fame. Any other questions? Anyone? Oh, there's one.
Hi, I just wanted to ask, in terms of like outshining the obvious, I've just finished up a placement in London, and I think about 90% of our briefs were like activation and PR focused. That was the big thing that came first, and then traditional advertising came after that. Do you think that like Manchester does enough of that, or like would you like to see Manchester go in that direction? Like, what is your opinion on activation and PR coming above traditional advertising?
I mean, you could probably speak quite very well to that in terms of what you guys have done with Aldi Social specifically.
Yeah, so I work quite heavily on the Aldi Social team, and our kind of bread and butter is those sort of PR big moments that sort of hopefully sort of light social up. And I think that like Manchester are doing a lot of it. Like, you've only got to look at the stuff that Meanwhile are doing, the stuff that sort of Aldi are doing, not to toot my own horn. But I think, again, to echo the point that everyone else has made, like, we kind of don't shout about it when it is us. And I think that because a lot of the sort of because there isn't as many agencies, although there's still so many, like, there's always going to be, like, in London there's a new agency on every corner, I feel like. So naturally there is going to be more of that PR stuff in London, and it is going to be sort of for those maybe bigger clients. But you've only got to Google PR agency in Manchester to see so many incredible agencies that are doing sort of smaller activations or bigger activations that you don't even know are them. Like, equally, you've only got to walk around sort of St Anne's Square until you find sort of some big activation these days. I saw a Nerds fan the other day. Yeah, so it is there. I think that it's just sort of not being shouted out enough.
And I think, thank you. I also think it probably should be part of any brief, that, no matter what the media channel is, it should always be part of the brief, whether or not it's on the paper or just in your mind, of what's your unofficial KPI. And it's always really going to be spoken about somewhere. That's what we're aiming for, right? Whether it's in the playground or in the pub, or when I worked at Camerama, I was creative director on the British Army, so we created this platform that's called This Is Belonging. And it was a very different way of talking about the army and of selling the army as a career choice. And one of our KPIs every year was, how angry can we make Piers Morgan that he will talk about us on national TV? And we hit it every year, and my proudest moment was when he blamed us personally for the collapse of modern civilization. And that we had that printed on a T-shirt for every person in the agency. And that was an unofficial KPI of ours, that it was actually quite a traditional, I guess, on paper, advertising campaign. It was TV, it was out of home, it was print, it was radio, it was social, it was digital, it was everything, but quite traditional probably on paper. But the KPI started with how we infiltrating culture, and that was what we were aiming for.
I think that brings our panel to a close, and I will hand over to John, who obviously this whole Creative Town Hall was part of his brainchild, to close us out for the evening.
Thank you.
So we've got one.
Hi everyone, super quick for me because I know we need to wrap it up and go and get some drinks. Kindly sponsored by McCann, meanwhile. Yeah, I'm John, aforementioned John. I'm a fellow creative, and I guess this is my baby initially that I now co-parent with Jeremy and Dina. So massive thank you to the Creative Circle for supporting the creative community. And thank you for coming with, and your ticket money will go to the Creative Foundation, which is all about supporting up and coming talent into the industry, which obviously is incredibly important because this whole thing dies if it dies with the older seniors. Thank you to Anto and Global for making this possible. Thank you to Sophia for being our event extraordinaire. Thank you to all of our panelists and people that came to grace our weirdly carpeted stage. And is that everyone? Jelly and Damien for our artwork. And thank you for all the team here for filming it, doing our audio. Apologies if you couldn't hear everything. We will work on that. This is only our third one. We're getting there. But thank you all for coming. We'll be back. We're definitely going to be back. It's really important to us. As someone that cut their teeth in Edinburgh and Manchester, it's really important for us to bring this all around the UK. The creative industry does not stop at the M25. Yeah, let's go get drunk. Thanks. Bye.